On day 3, we'll leave Sioux Falls, the Comfort Inn, drive over to Mitchell, where we'll see the Corn Palace, then drive some back roads to DeSmet, where we will go and see the Laura Ingalls sites there before spending the night there. We leave early in the morning so we can get everything done. Along the way, we pass the Porter Sculpture Park and see the world's largest bullhead from the highway. We also start to see signs advertising Walls drugs. Still 220 miles till you get there. Soon we're arriving in Mitchell and headed downtown to the Corn Palace. Along the way we see a little beef and buffalo. And then downtown we see the Corn Palace. This year they're saluting the military. They change the theme every year. Here's what it was in 1892, 1916, 1954, 1963, and in 1975. They spend $130,000 each year with 12 different colors of corn. You see they make a drawing and then they start filling in with the corn. They cut it in half lengthwise and nail it to the boards. And here's what it looks like inside. All of these pictures are made of corn. Basically, other than the corn, it's just a big concert hall like all other ones. And then we move outside and see how that is decorated also. And then after a little shopping there in the gift shop, it's time to head to DeSmet. We will notice that most of South Dakota is an agricultural area and they're growing a lot of corn. Here, North Dakota grows more wheat. And then we're entering DeSmet and looking for the Laura Ingalls sites. Around DeSmet will be several different places to look. We'll start our tour here at the Visitor Center and go over to the big house in town, and we'll be staying out here at the Super Deluxe Inn and Suites. They quickly get into the theme with the Ma and Pa restrooms, and we'll be visiting the Visitor Center area first. At the Visitor Center, we get our tickets and do a little shopping. And then it's off to the surveyor's house. They lived in this house for 1 year. Wasn't here when they lived in it, but this is the actual house they lived in. The surveyors for the railroad left it here, and this is what it looked like. It was over on Silver Lake. This is the oldest house in town, built in 1879, and Judy will be our guide. It was moved into town in 1884, and Judy isn't going to pick up well off of my camera, so I'm going to be talking over the top of her. Underneath Ma and Pa's bed was a trundle bed, and this is the organ that Mary played. When the surveyors left, they left a well-stocked pantry, and so for supper that night they had a feast. They had peaches, roast duck, fried potatoes, and soda crackers. Upstairs was a large low attic. Laura and Mary slept together in one bed, and Carrie slept in the other.
It opens on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah. The surveyor's stove had six rooms. Pageless, coal, and this is a facsimile. I know because I've seen the little thing. Buffalo chips.
The oven was filled with buffalo chips.
I'm not making
We
bread.
care to differ.
I'm not making bread with buffalo chips because I know maybe it might just be psychological. I don't know.
Here's a picture of the grown daughters, Ma, Carrie, Laura, Pa, Grace, and Laura. And this is Ma and Pa. And here we have Carrie, Grace, Laura, and Mary. Now we move over to the Brewster School where Laura first taught. The Brewster School was 12 miles southwest of town, and she lived with the Brewsters when she was there. She was only 15 years old and not old enough actually to teach, but the superintendent never asked her age and she never told.
She heard disturbance. She poked.
One night she woke up and Miss Brewster had a knife and was threatening her husband. Wasn't a very good place for Laura to live. The only good thing about it was that every Friday Alonzo Wilder showed up to take her home. This is a wagon similar to how they traveled around the country. And now we come to the first school in DeSmet. It was built in 1860 and moved to this current location later. All of the girls went to this school at one time or another while here. Many times they had double desks because some didn't have school books and they shared with others. They'd bring their school books from home. As they were renovating the building to put it back to its original place, they found the original chalkboards underneath the wallpaper and even drawings on them. The winters were bitterly cold here with a lot of snow, so they had to innovate. They used coffee grinders to grind wheat into flour, and they twisted straw to make firewood. Next we're going to head out to the house where Paul built for Ma in the city, and they live their life out here. It is the original house. Laura never actually lived here. She married before it was built. Paul started work on it in 1887 and finished it in 1889.
This is the house that Pa built. He started in the spring of '87, and by Christmas Eve they moved in. At that time it was just this room, the store, and the room up here. This is the original flooring. Everything else has been covered up. And I don't know. Over the next 2 years, they had a parlor, another bedroom, kitchen, and 2 more rooms upstairs. When he added the rooms upstairs, he also put a staircase up there and a door, thinking that in later years, when he was no longer able to work, that they could rent it out. He passed away when he was 66.
Mary's room was downstairs because she was blind. She had scarlet fever when she was 16 years old and it caused blindness. She was the oldest of the girls and went to a blind school in Vinton, Iowa. These are her things.
So she went there's some written out and she sort of doesn't see. After Pa passed away, Nathan and Grace put in the telephone. I'm pretty sure it was part line. Back in there. And when they put the phone on somebody else's ring, get all the gossip. This is those. They put the phone in the lawn area so that if they need help, I'll get on theirs and
Paul actually built this cupboard, this gray cupboard that the dishes
summer
are.
that Pa first dug out in the spring of '87. We had a guy that was a tour guide. He took everything off of there, opened that door, and we said, well, did you go down there? And he said, no, it was dark. I wouldn't even open the door because I'm pretty sure there's probably a whole town, a little spider put down there. And that's,
Now it's time to move upstairs where the rest of the girls had their rooms.
Yeah, Pa died in 1902 at age 66. He was 66. He had a heart failure.
The first room we come to is Rose's room. She was Laura's daughter and edited most of her books. She also was famous in her own right as a writer. Next we come to Caroline or Carrie's room. She married Mr. Swansea and was born in 1870 in Kansas, and she homesteaded her own self, and this is her homestead cabin. The last one is Grace. She married Nathan Dow in the house down in the parlor in 1901. Now we finished looking around downtown. Let's head out to the actual homestead that the Ingalls chose and homesteaded here at DeSmet. Paul liked to travel a whole lot. He started off in Pepin, Wisconsin, moved to Independence, Kansas, back to Pepin, over to Walnut Grove, Minnesota, down to Burr Oak, Iowa, up to Walnut Grove again, to DeSmet, back to Vinton, Iowa, before finally settling in DeSmet. And then Laura moved to Mansfield, Missouri. We saw her house there when we were on a trip to Branson, Missouri. Paul was always looking for land, and when the Homestead Act came out where he could get 160 acres for farming, he chose this 157 acres, and with a $16 filing fees, bought it after 6 years. He farmed and planted the area in front of you, but this whole area was his homestead. He filed his papers in 1886, and these are copies of those original filing papers, homestead proof. Today this has been set up as a tourist attraction for people to come and visit him. We're going to follow this route. We didn't actually ride horses, we rode on a wagon, but I didn't have any wagons drawn by horses to put as an avatar. start off the visitor center with its wagons, and then we go to Laura's travel stories in this building. She traveled extensively with her family. She was born in 1867 in Pippin, the second child, married in 1885, and published her first book in 1932 at the age of 65. Laura's story encompasses the whole era of what we would call the settlement of the United States. She wrote Little House in the Big Woods about the time in Pepin, Wisconsin. She wrote Little House on the Prairie about her time in Independence, Kansas. Then she wrote On the Banks of the Plum Creek about Walnut Grove, Minnesota's life. The Old Town in the Green Groves is about Burr Oak, Iowa. And then By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, and the first 4 years is DeSmet, South Dakota. Now let's look around at the Burvey shanty. There were two types of houses they built for homesteading. One was shanties like this one, which was built 125 years ago and moved to this site later, and side houses or dugouts that we'll look at in just a minute. Note that the shanties are insulated with newspaper. Then we come to the dugout or side houses. They were built into the side of hills, and they lived in one of these when they were in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. The roof leaks a lot. It's made out of sod and lasts about 6 to 7 years. Next we look at the hay roof barn. Next we look at the little house that was built here, or at least a replica of it, in 1880 when they first started homesteading here. Completed in 1886, it's been rebuilt using the proving papers that Paul filled out describing it. And now it's time to head over to the animal barn where Deborah will be touching again. Deborah, you can't touch.
Did you say not to touch?
No, he didn't. I didn't say it. No, I'm not getting in trouble.
You see, that's what she'd rather do than anything. Deborah touching again.
Don't have to pick your man.
We'll be taking a wagon ride out to school.
So anyway, we got Black Jack on the right and Jack on the left pulling the wagon today. My name is Jim. If you want to take a picture of something around here and I'm in the way, just let me know. So this is the Ingalls homestead. The Homestead Act gave them 160 acres of land free of charge except for a filing fee of $16. You have to live on it for 5 years. But out of those 5 years, they have to only live out here 6 months out of each year, so they could go to the town during the winter, so they could the kid girls had a better chance of going to school. You also have to build a house like that little house that you guys are in back there, and then they have to farm at least 10 acres. So we got.
Now this tall grass prairie. Would this be considered tall grass prairie?
Yeah, this is what they call a big blue stem. Back in '96, they replanted all the grass to the grass that probably would have been here when the Ingalls were here, and then so part of it is that big blue stem, and so it's really growing this year because we've been so wet. So the Ingalls came out and started homesteading or came to DeSmet in 1879. They started homesteading here in 1880, they routed until 1887. Then he moved back to town. They I lost my train of thought. They rented it for about 3 years, rented it out, and then they ended up selling in 1890. So they owned the land about 10 years. They lived on it for about 7 years. So being they were out here for 7 years, they farmed and everything. They fulfilled the requirements of the Homestead Act, and in order to keep the land and do it as they wished. So in 86, Pa had to fill out, they call it the prove-out papers. The prove-out papers are filled out to show that you have to fill all the requirements of the Homestead Act. So we have to fill them out. There's a copy of it in the wall there in the little house. You probably saw it, you were in there, yeah.
Showed it to us.
Yeah. But on those prove-out papers, it said that he had 60 acres plowed.
This school was built in 1889 by the Johnsons.
The connection the Ingalls has with this school is that Frank Forsberg, he was a first grade student of Laura's, and he ended up being a teacher and teaching in this grade here, in this school here. So that's the only connection they have. So we'll go inside and find a desk or stand or whatever you want to do, and we'll give you a little talk about the school. So before we go in, this lady here, in 1952, she taught this school. And she happened to be going by one day, going somewhere, and she happened to see the school set here, and she sent back a bunch of pictures and stuff about it. This is her contract in 1952. She got paid $2,250 for 9 months of teaching, plus she got to live in with the Johnson family. So,
Sounds about
There's
right.
your dress you can put on, Deborah, and bonnet.
I can wear a bonnet, I love to wear a dress.
Now we have a retired teacher here.
all right.
Happily,
Happily.
happily.
So anyway, like I said, this is Johnson number 20 school. Back when this was built and started out being built, there wasn't no electric lights in here or anything. If they happened to be there when it wasn't daylight out yet, they had to use a lantern like sitting on top of there. Electricity came into the county in 1947, and so, like I said, the school used till 1962, so that's why there's electricity in the building here. This stove here, this has been their heating system.
They didn't have school lunches, so they brought their food in old syrup cans and molasses cans like this. Might have some bread and butter, a piece of fruit from the train that came through, a boiled egg, or maybe a potato that they could lay up on top of the stove and it'd be cooked by lunch. They even had cookies they brought sometimes. Touch your saloon. Go ahead.
It's time to go home.
And then after a visit to the outhouse, note it's a double outhouse, so the Prairie social network could work. We head over to Flint's garage, and we're going to make some
And then of course
rope.
eventually pops
Shells
out.
for the
One of the
corn.
little kids went and got a fresh ear of corn out of the field the other day. That's how wet it is yet. It's got white stuff all over. And now
Well,
we're
you
gonna
can
reach
watch
in
your
there.
hand.
Okay, I will hold the wheel, so now you can reach for it. You wanna get the cup? Very good, Ryder. You did that just right. You waited. Okay, I'll take this. All right, now, Ryder, we're ready for you.
Oh boy, he's strong.
Back door. And then I'll take the ponies home after you guys get to go outside. Sunshine and activity, that's just how we do this.
Ooh, look at Deborah. Deborah doing good twisting those others.
You have a lot of fun with that, don't you? Paints and crayons. You learn about animals. Do you like kitty cats? Do you? Okay, you can step ahead, my dear. And what happens then is I pop these off of these 3 hooks. And that end just takes off, and you can take that off there, and then you hook here. And that part stays all twisted on its own.
Now it's time to leave the Ingalls homestead and head to one more place that we have to stop, the cemetery for the town, to see the graves of several of the family. Laura's not buried here, she's buried in Missouri where she was living at the time. We're going to be looking over this area of the cemetery. Buried here are Carrie, Laura's sister, Mary, her baby son who died at childbirth, Ma, who died at 84 years old, and Pa, who died at 66 years old, and Grace and her husband, Laura's sister. And now we leave the cemetery and head to the hotel. We will be staying in the Super Deluxe Inn and Suites for the night here. And this brings us to the end of day 3.